Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. If you are watching, you're already impressed at the fact that Dr. Jake Porter has come into the podcast again. He's been a guest before. If you don't know who Jake Porter is, you probably live under a rock because he has been all over social media and he's got so much wonderful information. He is the president and founder of Daring Ventures, which he'll share more about in a few minutes. But I didn't tell you this off camera, but you are someone that I push people to for intensives all the time, as well as my great friends, James Anir and Sharon Reinerson. But one of the reasons that I love to bring you in is that you're authentic
Mm,
and the encouragement, the direction, the guidance that you provide is grounded. It is experiential, but it's professional. But you're one of the kindest human beings in the infidelity recovery space. You never are part of the rage mob or the people that come out with this controversial information just for likes or clicks or views. And I just respect you
mm.
so dang much. I respect your
Oh,
work. I love the heart. You and I have been doing this a long time. And we know that it is all about the heart that we bring to our work, our family, counseling sessions, you name it. It is about the heart. So, for those that maybe don't know about Daring Ventures or a little bit more about what you do, why don't you take just a couple of minutes and share some of your
yeah.
background?
Well, Sam, thank you for having me back. I am glad to be here. I feel the same way about you in that you are very authentic and kind. And so I like having conversations with people with those qualities. And thank you for saying all those kind things about me. It feels good to hear. Yeah, I started Daring Ventures in 2017. Did CSAT training about 4 years before that, but launched Daring Ventures 2017. And my professional work grows out of my personal story. I'm a man in recovery myself, and what I really love to do is work with couples. That's my passion. Although I have had a return to some individual work here lately, which has been fun. But I just believe people can heal. And I believe people deserve to heal. And I genuinely believe that maybe not all, but many relationships cannot just survive this, but can go beyond mere healing into real thriving, that there's an opportunity through trauma to grow in a way that we couldn't without it. And so, in a strange way, optimal growth requires some trauma, but that's a
Right.
different topic. But yeah,
Yes, sir,
yeah,
you are correct. And there's lots of other people in this space. You and I are people that are very pro marriage. We are
yeah,
absolutely pro marriage. But in the right circumstances, we
sure.
sometimes have to be pro divorce. But we don't come from a bent in either direction. The bent is we want the best for that little family and for
That's
that
right.
individual to be able to ultimately heal and transform and integrate the trauma that they have unfortunately either caused or are the victim of. So today we're going to talk about something that I think is much needed in the work of healing from infidelity. It is when a betrayed, male or female, have to kind of witness the recovery work of the unfaithful, and the unfaithful is trying to uncover their why. And as the unfaithful starts to do work and they gain some momentum, they start to share their why. And the betrayed, not all of them, but a lot of them will say, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
How could he or she do this? How could you do all these things that you've done? You are a man or woman of this, but yet you've done these terrible things. And the betrayed finds themselves in a ditch where they're like, this doesn't make sense. I don't think that's right. I think it's this. How do you help the betrayeds walk out of that ditch? Because it is a deep, dark ditch that takes some real work to get out of.
Yeah. It is such a difficult piece of the healing process, what you're laying out there. I want to start by just validating why it's so important for betrayed partners to ask that question, to feel the need for an answer to that question, right? There's two pieces to it. Number one is the safety element. If you don't know why, and by extension, if I don't know that you know why, then you could do it again,
Right.
right? So if we're just looking at the behavior in a vacuum, if you're just some black box and it's a mystery what's happening, input, output, and we don't know what's happening internally there, that's really scary because we don't know the input to avoid to get that
Yeah.
old output that was so hurtful and painful. So there is a safety seeking motivation to this. But even once hypervigilance begins to subside and there is some sense of stability in place and the safety seeking drive begins to sort of reduce in volume, the grief work is asking the same question, but less from a protective place than a meaning making place. What does it mean? Like, okay, you did these behaviors, but what does it mean about me, you, us, our relationship? The why questions become meaning making questions, which is what grief work is. Grief work happens when my assumptive world, where my default understanding of reality has crashed. And now I have to figure out a new default understanding of the world. Well, if there's any chance I'm going to stay with you, I need to know why you did it as I'm rebuilding
Yeah.
this assumptive world in my mind. 1000% want to validate the need for the question.
Absolutely. Because it is something that I tell unfaithfuls all day long. Look, dude, or look, sister, if you don't know why you did this, why would anybody ever want to trust you again? You have to do this work.
Right.
So I agree with you. It is a question that is necessary. Where it can become obsessive or where it becomes a ditch is, but it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make
Right.
sense to me as a betrayed,
Yeah.
right?
That's right. It's really hard. And you gave me a full, I think, almost 45 seconds to think about this topic before you hit the record. So thank you for that.
I do well with public shaming. I'm used to it. So thank you for that, Dr. Jake Porter.
I did not mean to shame at all. I hope you don't
We're
feel any.
joking.
It's
We're
good.
joking.
I actually like having these discussions on the fly. I over prepare and then I get all wrapped up in getting through my notes. So I appreciate not knowing. But I wrote down a few notes and I can come at this from several angles and maybe we can just, like a prism, keep kind of turning this thing and looking at it through some different facets. Because there's a neurobiological piece
Yeah.
to this that's really important. But there is an experiential piece to this and a developmental piece to this as well. And I think I want to start by saying, as a man in recovery, I think I have pretty good solid recovery. I have multiple years of solid recovery and have done a lot of work, thousands of hours and thousands of
Yeah.
dollars worth of therapy.
Yes. Amen.
And I still don't know all the reasons why I did everything I did. I know many of them, many of them. I'll tell you something about probably 18 months ago. I had a group of men, it's about 6 men that I was leading through a family of origin intensive. Right. So we're talking about all this childhood trauma stuff and roles and all of this kind of stuff. And I was standing there and when I do this work, I share parts of my own story to illustrate the concepts I'm teaching, right? And so I'm standing at this whiteboard and I'm drawing all this stuff out, kind of drawing a timeline of my life and some traumas that happened and all this. And in that moment, here I was 15 plus years into recovery. Boom, I had a new insight. I
Yeah.
was like, holy moly.
Yep. And that's
There's,
really, I want to validate that that has happened to me. I say it this way. At 3 years, my why was a little bit different. At five, at 10, it was
yes,
different. It's
yes.
continuing to evolve, right?
And I'm so glad you said that because one of the things I jotted down quickly was changing perspective can mean a growing perspective. And
Wonderful.
this is so critical for betrayed partners to understand. Now, I listen, can a guy in recovery or lady in recovery just make something up to get you off their back? Sure. But I've seen this happen many times where, a betrayed partner asks the unfaithful a question. Why did you do that? And the unfaithful partner gives a different answer than they gave to that same question 3 months, 6 months, a year
Yeah.
earlier. And the betrayed partner goes, That's not what you told me. You're lying. You're right. Now, is it possible that they're lying? Sure, it is. However, however, it's more likely if they've been engaging in some real authentic recovery work, it is much more likely that what's actually happening there is that they've grown. They've got a deeper understanding of what's going on. I'll just mention I write about this in my book that you can get for free. On this, in the
Fantastic.
last chapter, I talk about some surprising signs of recovery. And actually, that deepening perspective is a sign of growth.
Yes, absolutely. Very well said.
So I've got a 5 year old and a 2.5 year old. And the 2.5 year old right now, one of her favorite books is called Biscuit in the Garden. Biscuit in the Garden. Biscuit is a little puppy. And the basic plot line of there are two characters. Well, I guess there's multiple characters if you add in all the birds, but they're very flat characters. You've got Biscuit and the little girl, and Biscuit knocks over a bag of bird seed, and the bird seed spills. And this is a big crisis. But you know what? Birds come and they eat the bird seed. And now the garden is filled with birds, and everything's okay. Not much plot to it, not much character development, rather linear in a very simple way. A leads to B, B leads to C, C leads to D. My 5 year old daughter, the books she's reading now, you know what? Those characters have a little more nuance to them. The plot is actually a bit more complicated, it has a few more elements and dimensions. There's not such a linear causal string of events. Go and read something by, Faulkner or Hemingway or whatever, and you've got something super complex, the brothers
Right.
Karamazov or whatever. Here's why I'm saying that. When we're in trauma, we our frontal lobe begins to go offline. And I don't mean this in a condescending way at all, but we regress in our
Yeah.
cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
Okay. So more complex, nuanced thinking, self-reflective, shades of gray, social and moral reasoning, all of that, we lose that. We go back to a much more childlike state of development, black and white, all or nothing, linear, flat, two-dimensional, much more
Yeah.
two-dimensional. And what happens is that in trauma, we're wanting a story, that part of our brain that's just looking for that safety and looking for that clarity, it's wanting a story that just clicks.
Yeah.
Reality's not that simple.
Right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So you alluded to, at some level, indicative of grief work.
Yes.
And we know if you market grief, nobody wants to read about grief. When I would write the subject lines at A Fair Recovery with Rick Reynolds, who I'm still great friends with and see all the time, I would write the subject lines and they would say, well, the article's about grief. Shouldn't we put something in grief? We should not put something on grief in the subject line because people are not going to open that article.
Right.
There's no way. They don't, nope. Grief, we're going to move that onto the side. So, to help those that are listening and watching, when they think about this nebulous grief work, is it a journey through the Appalachian Trail? Is it books? Is it crying? Is it yoga, Pilates? When you think about grief work for those that are like, okay, tell me what to do, what are some of the things that you suggest to couples in your intensives and in your individual sessions that grief work looks like?
Yeah. So it's important to first understand what grief is,
Yeah,
right? And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but grief is essentially a meaning making process.
yeah,
Okay. It is when our default understanding of the world can no longer exist as it did. And we now have to restructure that default understanding of the world, our assumptive world or our assumptive
yeah.
reality. I just lost my grandma. We had to reschedule recording this episode because my
I'm
grandma's died.
sorry.
Thank you. Wonderful woman, amazing. I had the honor of speaking at her funeral. And now here we come up to the holidays.
Oh, yeah.
And even these last couple years where we had to go to her, right? She couldn't get out of the house. We couldn't take her to the farm or this or that like we did in years past. We still went to her because how could I go through Thanksgiving and not be with grandma? right?
Right.
I've got to restructure what Thanksgiving means,
Yeah. Absolutely.
right? My default understanding of what the holidays is and means must now change, right? Now, obviously, that's going to scale with the size of the change to the default understanding of the world, to your assumptive reality. This is a small change because we've seen it coming, right?
Yeah.
But when my world is suddenly turned upside down because I'm learning about maybe years, maybe decades of deception, that things weren't as I knew, the size of that reconstruction is massive. That's not an alteration to my default reality. That is, this thing has crumbled to nothing and has to be built back up from the foundation.
You allude to this. This is trauma.
This is trauma.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so what we then do to get to that place, the way that our brain constructs a new assumptive world is this oscillation process. If anyone wants to geek out later, you Google dual process model of grief. Okay. This oscillation process between this orientation around what's now gone and the missing of it and the wait, it's there, but it's not, right? Like back and then what's new in the absence of this. And there's this back and forth. And it's like a river. It's like flowing down a river. Your brain is going to grieve. It
Yeah.
has to. But if I can float a river in two ways, I can get a tube and I can just let it take me where it will, or I can be in a kayak with a paddle and I can have some input into how I flow and which, when I come to a branch, which direction I take. And what we want to help people do is figure out how to hold on to that paddle
Yeah.
as they're flowing down this river of grief so that they have agency in where they end up. Now, to bring it back to this topic of the why, here's what I recommend. And I think later, hopefully, we can get into some of the neurobiology because I think that that will help as well. But I teach the unfaithful partner to try to communicate in what I call a multiple perspective statement. And what that is, first of all, let me say this: there is no good answer to the why question. I say this
That's a
to my
great point.
questions all the
That's a
time.
great point.
Yeah, I say that to couples all the time. When your betrayed partner, the partner you betrayed, asks you, why would you do that? Or how could you do that? There is not an answer you can give. That person's then go, oh, oh, I got it. Like
All
I've
makes sense
never seen
now.
that happen.
All makes
Yeah,
sense now.
I am not exaggerating. I have literally witnessed that question asked thousands of times.
Yeah.
Never seen it answered in a way that brings,
I would concur. In 20
yeah,
years, I've never seen a moment where it was
never.
like, oh, okay, well, now we'll just move on down the road.
Right. So the closest thing I've come up with to approximate an answer is this multiple perspective statement. Perspective one is back then. What I coach this person to do, the unfaithful party to do, think back then. If you could channel your old way of thinking, okay, and you had been given a truth serum back then, and you had to be honest about how you justified your behavior to yourself, your own internal rationalizations, what would you have said? I would have said, I deserve it. You don't have sex with me, and you're never going to know. And if you don't know, it's not going to hurt you. And I would have told myself that it doesn't really matter, and I'm only going to do it once. I call this part chewing gravel because if you're doing it right, it should be hard to say and hard to hear.
Yeah.
Back then, I would have said, and it's got to be raw, it's got to be honest, because the betrayed partner is going to know if you're just giving a load of bull,
Yep.
right? Okay, that's perspective one. Pivot. Today, I know the truth about that is, okay, so now with my recovery, with the therapy I've done, the coaching I've done, whatever, right? I look back on that. And now I'm going to evaluate that first perspective. Today, I know the truth about that is why would you want to have sex with me when I was treating you the way I was?
Yeah.
I was gone all the time. Today, I know the truth is I was blaming you. I was confusing cause and effect. I thought you were the cause and my behaviors were the effect, but it was the other way around. Today, I know the truth is you did find out and it did hurt you and me and our family, right? So today, I know the truth about that is, and then third perspective, looking forward in light of what I now know, here's what I want for you, for me, for us. I want to tell you everything. I want to put our relationship first. I want you to be the only person for me and me the only person for you. When you can say those three all together, this is really important for the betrayed partners to hear. I'm not saying you're going to have all the pain gone, but if it takes the intensity level of your pain from an 8 to a 7 or a 9 to an 8, that
It's a
is
win. It's
success.
a win. And like we say in sports, recovery is very similar to sports. We're trying to stack wins.
That's
And
right.
so if I can keep stacking some wins, I'm going to climb out of the ditch, right?
That's exactly right. I teach my clients when I'm teaching them this, I share the concept of allostatic load. So my allostatic load is the sum total, it's the accumulation of all the stressors and all the anxiety and all the pressures and all the trauma that I'm carrying all the time. And these little moments, that 9 to an 8, that 8 to a 7 in terms of intensity, it's taking a little bit off that allostatic load. It's like I have a certain amount of bandwidth
Yeah.
and right now it's just totally eaten up with this unprocessed pain and grief. But as I metabolize it little by little, more bandwidth opens up. And as it opens up, my nervous system, my brain will naturally channel that open bandwidth toward more healing.
I think it's fascinating. I said off camera, man, if I could have you in every week, I would do it because I just love talking to you because you bring it down to such a simple point. And out of respect for your time, I want to pivot and give you a chance to talk about, you alluded to the neurobiology of
Yeah.
it. So take a few minutes and unpack that because
Right.
I know the betrayeds and I know that the unfaithful are sitting here going, look, you're helping me so much. You're saying when I don't even have words to say, so keep on going, right? If we were in church, I'd be waving a tissue going, preach, because this is the type of stuff that helps people move a little bit at a time. So, what I think is important is for you to unpack that so that they can wrap their mind around it. This is like a free therapy session for them.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I do think that this piece of neurobiological understanding can really help. We have a program that we offer called Returning to You, where max 8 women who've been betrayed come together. We have them for a week and we just really spoil them. It's a beautiful setting, but a lot of deep therapy work goes on too, and lots of trauma work. But I always come and share a meal with them and answer their questions. And I'm telling you, this question, the why question, comes up.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I explain this, there's one or two ladies, they just feel, again, it's not like it makes all the pain go away, but it does help them make sense a little bit.
Yeah.
So here's how I start this usually. If I feel enough rapport with the partner, I will say something like this: Hey, no shade on you for not being an addict. But let me tell you, you're never going to understand.
Yeah.
And here's why. There is a reason that in, say, 12-step recovery, addiction is described as insanity.
Yeah.
The definition of insanity is that it does not make sense. It is not reasonable.
Yeah.
There's a dear colleague of mine on my team here at Daring Ventures, Kathy Reynolds, and I heard her say it one way to this poor wife sitting there, and I said, I am ripping that off. I'm stealing that from you. She said, honey, she's got a strong Southeast Texas accent. She said, honey, you ain't never going to make sense out of something so senseless.
Yeah.
That is hard.
It really is.
That is hard. But let me give you the neurobiology to support that. So, all of us have parts, right? We talk about parts and parts work, and there's, internal family systems, and there's all sorts of models out there but the reality is every single one of us is actually made up of lots of parts. That's
Yeah.
normal, So right now I'm kind of in my teaching part, my clinician teacher part, right? Earlier I was in my employer part, as when I was in another meeting, and she works with us now, and I went down to my wife's office and I had my husband part activated for a little bit, and this morning I was getting my girls ready for school and my daddy part was activated. But here's the thing, all of those parts are integrated enough, okay, that I can flexibly move from one to the other. And someone who knows me and is watching, like if my wife were a fly on the wall right now, the way I'm showing up with you, even though I would never dare show up with her this way, okay, expert teacher, whatever, like that ain't gonna fly. But she wouldn't be surprised. She wouldn't be looking at me going, who's that guy? Right? Because my parts are more or less integrated. Okay. Well, trauma, which most folks with compulsive behaviors or who have committed chronic betrayal have early traumatic experiences.
Yes.
Okay. Trauma causes a dissociated part. So, neurobiologically, we have these things called self states. So, I am literally neurobiologically in a different self state, brain and body, right now with you than when I'm with my kids or with my wife or with my friends or whatever. But again, they're integrated enough. However, trauma can cause a dissociated self state, a self state that is not integrated into the whole. And it can become so dissociated that it operates in its own closed system. If we believe addiction is real, for which I do believe addiction is real, and I know that acting out behaviors can be addictive, right? What that means is the dopaminergic pathways of my brain have been hijacked or closed off in a way that other parts of my brain that allow additional data to come in are shut off.
Yeah.
So when this dissociated self state gets activated, inside that self state, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you come out of it and you look at it, you go, what was I doing? So, partners, betrayed partners, it will never fully make sense to the unfaithful either, because I look at what I was doing before I got into recovery, and it doesn't make sense. Not when I look at the whole of reality, it's not reasonable. It is illogical. But the experience, that dissociated self state is activated in that closed little loop, that alternate reality. Oh, it all makes perfect logical sense.
Right.
And that is a neurobiological reality. If someone wants to geek out about it, I recommend a book called Affect Regulation Theory by Daniel Hill. And he does a deep dive into all the research that talks about these dissociated self states.
But it makes such great sense because it's truth, it's science, it's factual data. And I know you have to do this. I have to do this a lot with betrays and say, look, this is factual data. These are not excuses. These
No,
are not minimizations.
no.
But this explains our mindset. If people knew how I was, I get a lot of compliments from some people that they're better than I deserve. But if they knew me
Mm,
20 plus years ago, they would say, who is that person? That is not Sam. It describes so wonderfully, but yet tragically,
yes.
how we were, who we were. I was such a different human being that people have no idea the utter narcissism and me monster that I was. And I am a product of massive trauma. You and I have never had the pleasure of talking about the trauma, but I have had so much trauma, primarily in childhood and some adulthood, that I was a different person. But you talk about integrating, which would you agree that part of recovery, not the totality, but part of it is learning how to integrate this?
Yes.
One way for the unfaithful, one way for the betrayed is integrating this trauma into our lives so that eventually we can get our brain back and our life back. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes is from The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. And he basically says, mental health is a commitment to reality at all costs.
Wow.
When I begin to live in a false reality, which is what a dissociated self state is, which is necessary to support and justify addictive behavior or acting out behavior, okay, the rest of my life will suffer. My mental health
Yes.
will suffer. And integration is about saying there is one reality here. There's
Yeah.
one reality here. Yes. Yeah.
I love the fact that you can break this down in a way that is palatable. For those of you that are watching, if you haven't been taking notes during today's podcast, I would invite you to go back. I have my own Sharpie because I learned this from Rick Reynolds and one of my early mentors that said, you're going to have to be a lifelong student
Yes.
of recovery. I'm always trying to learn. I don't pretend to have arrived, and your heart is you haven't arrived, but you're growing, you're maturing, you're learning, you're developing. That's being a lifelong student. I just love the authenticity of it. And out of respect for your time, so you mentioned your book. I'd like you to kind of pump your book again, especially you said it's free, because you do intensives, you do
Yeah.
individual work, you have a whole team of staff, you're based out of Houston, Texas. So, how can people find out more about all the things that you do and, of course, your book?
Yeah. So drjakeporter.com is a great place to start. You can download a PDF of my book for free. From there, you can get to the Daring Ventures website. That's our more clinical and coaching practice where we do customized intensive for couples and ongoing care for couples. If you're in Texas or a few other states, we have some therapists licensed in some other states, but coaching offered, around the world. And then also have an online group coaching program for couples where it's called Choose Connection Academy, and lots of teaching and live sessions with me. And but drjakeporter.com is a great place to start for all of that.
It's been wonderful to have you in conversations like this. We do kind of geek out because we love this stuff and we can
Oh
talk
yeah,
about this for hours. And
absolutely.
I hope that those of you that have been watching and listening have learned so much. I would encourage you, if you want more help, you can reach out to Dr. Jake Porter or any of his staff. If you want help from me, just reach out to me. You can leave a comment. I'd love for you to subscribe, but you can email me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. Dr. Jake, I'm just always eternally grateful. I'm
Um,
grateful for you coming into this little podcast with this little group of people here that it's all trying to do our best. But on behalf of everybody in crisis, I'm grateful for your heart and your willingness to put your story out there and just to be willing to give so much. And so you are such a gift to people all over the world and certainly to this little podcast. So thanks for coming in. And
Thank
for
you for
those of you
having
that
me.
tuned in, I'm grateful for each and every one of you. So we'll see you next time on the podcast.